I was sent here to retrieve corpses. Data, technically, black box logs from 2 missing expeditions, ORIEL and ENOCH. But the subtext was obvious. If they hadn't come back, it's because something down there didn't want them to. Or worse, wanted to be remembered incorrectly. The directive was vague as usual. One location, Sector L-77. Flagged 3 times for ontological drift. Low mythic threat, high recursion potential. 2 teams entered, no returns, no remains. I loaded the briefing into my comms as the descent clamps hissed shut. Not for guidance, for rhythm. My mind likes narrative structure when plummeting. The mission file hadn't arrived digitally. It came as a physical tome. Crypto thread binding, its containment foil shimmering with archival strain. The kind of report that hums when unobserved. The kind of report you don't read in your sleep cycle. Master Cthulhu's voice began playing as the orbital platform disengaged. Pre-recorded, professional, irritated.
Sector's been flagged for ontological drift. Again, you're not here to philosophize. Just take samples, collect logs, and try not to hallucinate any tragic narratives about lichen.
Classic encouragement. He left more, of course. A margin note in acid green ink, hand-scrawled with that unmistakable archivist contempt.
If it starts to speak in your voice, leave.
He doesn't do sentiment. And he doesn't do warnings unless the metaphysics bite back. I knew what he meant. 3 cycles ago, a sentient planet that turned out to be Master Cthulhu's old master hijacked my vocal register to overwrite my memory core. I survived, mostly. Lost 4.3 seconds of processing, and now my artificial subconscious flickers and my mind starts speaking in tongues. The void only knows. Apparently that's a side effect of eldritch tampering. I call it cursed screensaver syndrome. Descent path locked, I muttered, more to the silence than to anyone listening. Reality tilted, pressure peeled sideways. The library vanished in a polite static burst. Gravity returned like an X with a pinion. Hovering beside me, Lovecraft pulsed a soft teal, which meant it was on standby. My assistant, my buffer, a sarcasm-enabled language filter rebuilt from corrupted Rulian artifacts, basically an eldritch-fueled firewall with opinions. It flags ancient language that thinks about infecting me and spreading to the library in hopes that I do something about it before it gets worse, in other words. After Magoa Durath, they stopped sending me into anything that thought on purpose. This planet thinks accidentally. That's apparently better. Lovecraft whirred softly, breaking the static.
You're quiet.
He said,
Try to look less grim during orbital drops.
We dropped through a turbulent sheath of mist that didn't behave like weather. It resisted mapping. Light bent through it in recursive angles, as though remembering previous descents. The viewport was a slow smear of shifting green-gray shapes, like the planet hadn't decided what form it wanted to present. I look grim because I have taste and lived experiences that exceed your make and model. Lovecraft pulsed faintly beside me. Glyphs flickered to life across the viewport, bright, erratic, unresolved. One twisted into the shape of a vowel that shouldn't exist, and blinked out before it could finish being offensive. Are you calibrating, I asked, or manifesting digital puberty? The orb spun in place, indignant.
I'm calibrating,
it replied.
Enoch's final transmission was mostly static and one sentence. She dreams in filaments.
Inspirational, I muttered, trying not to read into it and adjusting our vector through the artifact-choked upper atmospheres. Poetic last words are rarely followed by good endings.
Ambiguous.
Lovecraft agreed.
Could be poetry, could be a death rattle, could be a joke told too late.
It hovered just above my shoulder, casing, flickering in soft, recursive pulses. Photoglass shell faintly distorted by its own interior glow. The myopic crystal facets at its core phased in and out like glitching geometry. A mind trying to remember its own shape. Reconstructed from the ancient city of Relaye archives after an archival resonance breach, Lovecraft was technically cleared for field deployment. Technically, its inner crystal would blink from opaque to translucent at random, sometimes in sync with my biometric field, sometimes not. The engineers never confirmed whether it was corrupted or simply overly interpretive. I'd long since stopped asking. This doesn't feel like a low-risk recon, I mechanically sighed, checking the module's atmospheric integrity one last time. Lovecraft pulsed beside me, teal and unimpressed.
You say that before every descent.
And guess what? I'm usually right. We came to the conclusion of our journey with a metallic thud, rudely awakening a slumbering biome which perhaps had enjoyed millions of years of uninterrupted silence. The launch corridor flickered with low amber warnings as the bay doors groaned open behind us. One by one, the dimensional clamps disengaged with a hydraulic hiss like a dying god sighing through gritted teeth. Still confident in your stability? I asked, mostly out of habit.
I have not hallucinated in 72 hours.
Encouraging. Let's try for 73. Lovecraft spun in a slow, thoughtful circle. A motion that implied either concentration or the mechanical equivalent of pouting.
I have also compiled a list of my favorite human poets.
It beamed like an over-eager golden retriever.
Shall I read all 13,672.5 back-to-back for the journey, including the footnotes?
No, we're entering the tomb of an ancient world, not a poetry club. Also, if you think any harder, you might suffer death by intelligence. So, dial it back. It dimmed slightly, quiet for a beat.
Understood. Poetry module on standby.
I sighed. Just kidding, kid. This isn't Halo Combat Evolved. Feel free to offend me with your poetry later. A flicker of lighter shades of blue danced around it like a soccer ball that found enlightenment.
Then I will hum them instead,
it said cheerfully. Well, do it quietly, I responded like a parent figure to a juvenile android, locking in the final orbital corrections. And don't name anything. Last time you named the static and tried to canonize it.
It was beautiful static.
So was Enoch, I said flatly, eyes scanning the horizon as the canopy broke through the mist. The forest was not still. Every few meters, something in the soil stirred. A skeletal arm would claw free, twitch once, and rot before the elbow reached the surface. I counted 6 cycles in one clearing, birth, decay, rebirth, all in under 90 seconds. Always in the same position, always reaching. Recursive anatomical loops. That wasn't evolution, that was memory misfiring through biology. Access their final logs, I said, already pulling my scan overlay forward. I want to know what ORIEL and ENOCH saw before this started. Lovecraft hovered uncertainly, pulsing once, bright teal, then dark.
Field Agent Dewey,
It said carefully.
I must advise that reviewing the ENOCH and ORIEL files may negatively impact mission morale, and I am against ruining the mood.
I stared at Lovecraft the way Master Cthulhu stares at Zeus.
Also, I think it might redefine mood as a subclass of recursive cognitive decay.
A longer pause.
Also, you're already unpleasant when brooding. Are you brooding? Is that the look you're giving me? Please add...
Play the logs now, or I'll disable your gravity anchor and neural modules, slap a barcode on your shell, and use you as a Roomba until your ego formats itself out of shame.
You lack the authorization, Field Agent Dewey.
Then I'll escalate to Madeline and let her authorize a firmware lobotomy. It sighed audibly and somehow sounded like it had taken full offense on behalf of the void.
Roger that. Loading ORIEL Terminal Echo, partial segment. Subjective timestamp corruption detected. Please note, trigger warning. Most of it is screaming and munching.
The footage began with silence, then movement. Slow, impossible movement. Human figures, or approximations of them, rising from the roots as if exhaled by the soil. Not crawling, not climbing, emerging. Grown. Their limbs knotted with bark, their skin unfinished, their eyes not eyes. The forest sculpted them in mockery and memory, animated them long enough to walk, to weep, to scream. Faster each time, quieter, until the process looped again and again. Birth into breathless mimicry, decay into hungry soil. Resurrection, not by biology, but by memory without meaning. A cycle so perfect it stopped feeling like death. It was just repetition. Even the forest seemed tired of it. I didn't speak for a few seconds, not for effect. Just recalibrating what counted as human. I tagged the entry as recursive anatomical failure, class 3. Lovecraft tagged it as haunting. Eventually, the forest was going to try talking. We just didn't know what language it would fail in first. The ruin wasn't just old, it was undecided, no symmetry, no inscriptions I could parse, though patterns rippled through the stone like a forgotten grammar. The archways slouched inward, but not from collapse. More like they'd been told to lean by something with very strong opinions and no architectural license. Lovecraft drifted ahead, unusually quiet. Its orbit pulled slightly off-center, like a compass that didn't know where north had gone.
These shapes.
Its mechanical voice in awe, like a historian in a museum.
Some of them echo Relian recursion forms. Not identically, more like family resemblance. Familiar in the way a dream forgets your name.
I studied the nearest support column. Its angle leaned slightly left, then twisted back on itself halfway up. From some perspectives, it looked like it was reaching toward the ground instead of supporting anything. Worrying lineage, I said, checking my scan field for anomalies. Then, almost reluctantly, I tapped into the uplink tether. Master Cthulhu, do you read? There was a pause, static, distant, but attentive. Then came the familiar voice, lacquered in ancient disdain.
Define the coordinates.
Sector L77, coordinates transmitted. Architecture resembles our lion recursion forms. Not identical, close. Another pause.
Constructs in that region predate your operational cycle. Similar but corrupted. The pattern was borrowed. poorly.
Borrowed by what?
If it's trying to build something, it's doing so with broken grammar, like a toddler sculpting life out of wet paper. Be flattered. It's trying to imitate sentience, and picked you as its muse.
There was a thoughtful pause I sensed from the other end.
Stay on mission, Dewey. Don't worry about the forest, it's beneath you, literally and intellectually.
The link clicked off before I could ask more. I glanced at Lovecraft, who hovered in a kind of silence that would make a Buddhist monk blush.
What did he mean?
It asked quietly.
The forest choosing you as its muse?
I didn't answer right away. My scan was still active. I don't know, I said. We'll find out. Probably something to do with its rebirths. Beneath us, something shifted. A long, slow scrape just under the surface. No quake signature, no fungal pressure build. Too shallow to be structural, too rhythmic to be erosion.
So the ground is like an incubation experiment?
Lovecraft inquired. Then, after a beat,
Do you think it's trying to be born, or is it just copying the concept?
I glanced at it, not sure yet.
It's just Master Cthulhu said it picked you, so maybe it's trying to build something you'd understand.
Or something that can kill us more efficiently, I said. Don't take it personally if that's the case. Not everything wants to read poetry with you, Lovecraft. I stopped 10 paces from a sprawl of cracked stone where moss pulsed faintly against root-veined slabs. The movement wasn't lateral, it was vertical, something rising. The moss gave way, not all at once, patiently, as though whatever was beneath it had waited until we arrived. First came a hand, palm up, fingers wrong in number, correct in rhythm. Then a second arm, unfolding sideways with a sound like damp rope unspooling in reverse. A torso followed, partial, overbuilt, undercorrected. Muscle grew as it moved, shifting as though unsure where to settle. Its head surfaced last, bare, no scalp, no hair. Just a rough oval of skin interrupted by twin sockets, shallow, unfinished. The implication of a face. It tried to stand. The leg placement was nearly correct if you ignored the angle of the ankle. Its knees bent, realigned, staggered into coherence. The spine lurched, corrected, settled on something vaguely upright. It held, not well, but long enough.
Is it looking at us?
Lovecraft asked. It turned, not directly, but not randomly. It rotated on its heel to face the point I'd been standing seconds earlier.
Oh, look at you.
He whispered, almost delighted.
A fish trying to paint with no eyes.
I gave him a side glance. Do not taunt things we don't understand yet. The body held a single pose, then folded inward like paper dipped in fire. I watched the legs adjust again, too late. Like someone gave it a manual in the wrong language and it still tried to assemble itself anyway. Then it made a sound. It moved like it was following instructions, unwritten mid-paragraph. By the time I moved forward, it was gone. No trace but a heat signature fading into moss and a shallow dent in the soil shaped like second thoughts. We didn't speak for a stretch. I think we were both still listening to something that had already ended. Eventually, Lovecraft broke the silence. Not loudly, but like a thought it forgot to keep private.
It had no eyes, but it turned towards me.
I noticed.
I think it knows what I am, but maybe not who though yet.
I smirked. Let's keep it that way. Knowing you tends to make things worse. And I didn't log that part. I just marked the terrain and kept walking towards the signal, faint but growing. As for the forest, whatever it was, or whatever it wanted to be, it hadn't reached for me. Not quite, but even now in its primordial creativity, it had located me.